So I thank you all for sparing a day to learn from all the cloud enthusiasts, and I hope you all can hold your energy for additional 30 more minutes. And I really appreciate the Microsoft strategy also, uh, which actually help customer provide a feedback, and we kind of learn from that feedback and provide those feedback into the product improvements and bring the best platform ever that you can depend on. And as a part of that feedback loop, Microsoft have implemented a hybrid strategy to begin with in every of their product segment. When I say every of their product segment, that includes the Microsoft 365, which is successor of the Microsoft Office, and we are enjoying the Microsoft Office 365 in a hybrid manner where it can be in a cloud and also can be run on the go offline. Like that, actually, Microsoft recently announced the Windows 365, where the workstation in the cloud, which can be accessible anywhere. It can provide you a continuum over the breadth of a device platform like the Android or the iOS based iPad or even Mac OS, that you can launch your Windows 365 platform running enterprise apps on it. But that's all that information is around the hybrid experience around the work frontline workers or the enterprise users and the end user base. Today we are going to touch upon the hybrid strategy and hybrid offering from a cloud perspective to deploy and build applications and innovate your applications into a cloud while having the hybrid experience on it. And let's dive into that today. And let us understand first what exactly we are going to need of an hybrid. So first of all, the compute is remaining in a cloud, offering you a massive gazillion CPU and the compute capability into the cloud. But then there is a need at the edge as well. And that's what something that we are going to experience in every business, where there is an intelligent edge and there is an intelligent cloud. Both in combined is providing you the best experience. What is this intelligent edge means, right? So if we are looking into IoT, edge computing, 5G, AI-enabled devices that are out there running on a Raspberry Pi, or maybe the digital twin. What is digital twin? When we look at the actual entire ecosystem of a world, and that is actually built in a digital, which means a digital replica of the real world, things, place, business processes, and people. There are robots out there doing some of the work on behalf of people, and that's a digital twin experiment, we can say, right? When we look into it, every little industry is now embracing the digital twin capability being developed into it, and which makes up the connected world. And while we look into this hypothetical society to be built, one thing to keep in mind, without hybrid capability, it is not going to be possible. So the solution that we are going to bring in, it is posed by the few of the challenges that we see in the world today to build the digital twin. Complex models, siloed data, combine multiple different building blocks runs in a different clouds, creating a scalable and environment while securing them, and also making sure that it is synced with the real world as well. But these are not the only obstacles, right? People also demand different things. Regulatory and data sovereignty is one of the requirement. Latency is another one. Required workload required at the edge is another one. Application and data center modernization are the drivers to influence into the digital twin. And also, last but not least, business continuity and resiliency. While we are kind of keeping all of these things in mind, what Azure have done or Microsoft have done is to outline these 5 characteristics and all the guiding principles to build the hybrid cloud. When we are looking into the requirements of the comprehensive or the continuum use cases among the on-prem or the multi-cloud, where your workload could be running in a SaaS, PaaS, or infrastructure as a service code anywhere in any other cloud, all these areas needs to be connected with each other. It needs to allow to maximize your technical debt and investment that has been made already into your space or IT segment. We want to make sure that it offers the unified control plane across the landscape so that we can have an end-to-end view into what's happening with your application and so forth. Or last but not least, we need to make sure that it supports the data everywhere, not only in the cloud, but it also offers the similar data platform on the edge as well. And we want to make sure that we support all the hardware that has been purchased by all of our customers so far, and it has been out there running in everybody's data center, warming the data center, and want to not forget about them too. So keeping these 5 guiding principles, what we have built up is the hybrid strategy for an Azure. So let's look into that. Number one, we want to make sure that we can provide a platform which can offer you a continuum where we can leverage and run our data centers all across the globe, or any type of environment that we can run, and we want to make sure that it supports all the on-prem VMware, any other cloud providers. We want to make sure that it also offers the supportability across the data centers and so forth, and it runs in Edge on a Raspberry Pi. So Azure Arc is the element that Microsoft have invested, which offers you the single control pane as well, which we'll be looking into it in a few minutes. But that's the one area to start with. That's how the hybrid strategy begin with. When we look into today's data center, we have hundreds to thousands of applications running either on VM, containers, serverless, or maybe any type of code, .NET, Java, PHP, any type of code that's running. It could be running on a data centers, it could be running on a managed service providers or the OEM hardware, IoT devices, anywhere it is running, or it could be running in a cloud. And that's the second element that we have kept it in mind. It could be running in a Kubernetes too, right? So we don't want to forget about that elements, right? So single control pane with Azure Arc offers you support across the multi-cloud, what we saw in the last slide. Also, we can expand our supportability at scale using the Kubernetes app management with Azure Arc, and we can run any data services anywhere. How are we going to do that? So let me take an example of Azure. In today's world, on an Azure, how we are managing our resources. So we have a variety of areas that we secure our governance process. We secure our environment. We provide the rollback access. We kind of lock down certain areas. We tag our resources. We are kind of providing the uniform backup or the management experience. Whatever we are doing across all the Azure services can be extended using Azure Arc on the variety of offering our data centers that we have. We want to make sure that when Azure Arc is enabling that thing, it is free for the administration purpose, while there is a little charge required when you want to implement the blueprint and you want to apply some security policies and all. Some of the tool set is what you ended up paying for it. So starting with an Azure Arc is not a cost. It's not incurring any cost on your burden here. The fourth element we want to make sure that I touch upon is the data element. While we are implementing Azure Arc on your on-prem or any cloud gear, we could bring your Azure experience on and actually the third-party cloud or even the on-prem, and that's what the data services like offering the managed SQL instances or perhaps the hyperscale or maybe the running a SQL into an using the SQL on an Azure. It's a similar experience. You wanted to run it on your on-prem. All of it can be unified, run through an Azure and managed through an Azure portal itself. And that's what something we are going to see in this slide, where on-prem, when people are having the value proposition running data platform on an Azure, it offers seamless backup and a seamless recoverability, right? The same experience people are going to experience when they extend their data pane running on-prem using Azure Arc. and that's the kind of experience we are bringing, which is completely top notch. None of our competitors could offer that. Many of our competitors actually have restricted their hybrid capability into the compute space only, but not into the data space. So that is the one of the differentiator for us to think about it. But while we go through all of it, the another thing to keep in mind, what can be supported on-prem, and that's where I think the fifth element that comes in about supporting any type of hardware. And Azure hybrid strategy is built upon it partnering with our hardware ecosystem like Cisco, the Lenovo, HP, all of these companies. We have worked with them to certified Azure Arc can be extended into any data center. So that's where the Azure Stack Hub comes in, where the traditional build-up data center can be used as an Azure in any data center or the customer data center, any colo where customer have deployed their hardware itself. All it needs to be making sure that that hardware is supported under the Azure Arc compatibility module. Many customers still want to purchase the hardware and deploy it, where for that purpose, actually Azure Stack HCI, hyper-converged infrastructure, is what something that has been adopted by the customers. Now, Azure Stack HCI, you can go to Azure Hybrid page and look into it, what are the compatibility that's out there, and you can look into it. And Azure Stack Edge is the Microsoft's created, Microsoft certified, Microsoft published and shared with you that type of devices that comes up and you can procure through an Azure portal itself. And let me take a moment here to show you how you could literally provision the Azure Hybrid using the Azure Arc here. So I'm in my Azure portal here, and I'm going to search for Azure Stack Edge. And I can just literally click on a create here. It is going to ask my subscription, and it is going to ask me the country I am going to have this shipped to. So based upon the country needs, there will be a different type of capability available. Now, why people are buying this type of devices through Azure itself? Because Azure Stack Edge comes with the several options where a lot of company or enterprises want to deploy the AI capability, AI vision, or the stream analytics or the IoT analytics that they want to run on it, which requires a special type of code to be run, and that's what something Azure is offering to our customers to run their edge into the customer site with the Azure certified hardware, so that any of the ML service or the AI service that Azure has certified to it, it can be run into it. So you can select any of this device based upon your need, and you will see what is the pricing going to be. You can select it. Once you go through the ordering process, the device will show up into your premise, and you can deploy it based upon instruction. The HCI version of it, it only offers you managed view, something you have to procure on your own, and then only you can configure it. So you have to work with the third party to ship that hardware to you based upon your terms with that hardware provider vendor, and that's how you are going to basically enable HCI. Our hub is already purchased hardware, and that's how you are going to leverage the Azure Hybrid deployed on a specific hardware. Some of the capability that is defined here I already mentioned, so I'm going to skip through in the interest of time, but I want to definitely make sure I take up some time to explain Azure VMware solution. Why it is very important, because customers have invested lots and lots of effort over the many years, and they have deployed their workload into a VMware. Either the customer is requiring the validated system or the application ecosystem that runs on a VMware, and customer don't want to disrupt. The entire VMware solution can be deployed in an Azure and managed through an Azure. So once you deployed Azure Arc or maybe the Azure VMware solution, your entire solution is appearing within Azure single management pane. It is supported by Azure Monitor. It is supported by Azure Security Center. It is supported by Azure Backup, and you can literally have the seamless experience brought into an Azure using Azure VMware solution. In order to take a deep dive into it, here are the actual way to deploy it, where the actual VMware host, physical host, can be mapped into a single host that comes into an Azure, and that's how you are going to run your environment into Azure. Either you can get the bare metal or the dedicated hardware, dedicated host, or either you can get one-to-one mapping of a VMware host running in an Azure VM. Choice is yours based upon your workload need, but that can be supported. So that's another continuum feature that I wanted to make sure that you understand how Azure is flexible enough, it is compatible enough with all type of hybrid requirement that you are going to need. So in a nutshell, what we have covered about those 5 guiding principles, and you can innovate, you can literally innovate your digital twin into an Azure without any compatibility challenge or anything like that. However, want to make sure that you also understand when we are actually offering you a hybrid from an workload capability perspective, want to make sure you also understand that how exactly the business continuity is going to help you achieve your enterprise goal. So many customers have started actually venturing into an hybrid offering through a business continuity, where they are moving away from the 2 data center design. They are converting their disaster recovery site into an Azure. So they run their actual workload in their primary on-prem data center, but they run their disaster recovery into an Azure. And that's their first step into the door, while they want to make sure that their environment is supported in an Azure for the critical system, but then they are ready for a future as well. And that's the another segment that we wanted to call out here. So one-click backup of a VM that goes into it using Azure Site Recovery, and that gives you the system consistent state that can be recovered into an Azure. It can offer you a different versioning of it. So if your system hits with ransomware or anything, or human error, you can literally replicate your environment into an Azure without any touching your on-prem. So you don't need to come back to get the data from an on-prem. You can recover data and apps quickly and reliably with the consistent state into an Azure, because spinning off those VMs from those ASR copy would be very, very simple. And you can save a cost on it because of Azure Hybrid Benefit. Azure Hybrid Benefit is a software license feature where you don't have to pay for a licensing, and you can bring your license, which has been purchased on-prem, into running in an Azure. But while we actually bring workload into an Azure, there is another element called the storage. Many enterprises and customers have a massive amount of terabytes and terabytes of data sits in their NetApp or maybe Isilon or some type of NAS capability, and we want to make sure that that is supported in Azure as well. So Azure has a solution called File Sync which is supporting SMB and NFS. SMB is equivalent to a CIFS and NFS. So we basically put all of your data into a blob and overlay on in a file structure manner, which has all the namespace can be created. You can spin off multiple file sync server, and all of your end users will be accessing your NAS shares over the file sync. So you can deploy multiple of those file syncs in a different variety of locations, branch offices, your headquarters, where all of your Azure files is serving through that file sync. So namespace is accessible locally, but the actual data and the actual file structure sits in an Azure. So it can remain in a multi-site sync. You can control geography if you want to. You can also put the policies on top, whether how the cloud tiering will take place. And by default, you don't have to come to the local site on a file sync server to take a backup of that. the backup can be managed, or the multiple copies of your data can be managed using the cloud backup behind the scene. And with the geo redundant storage, you can also maintain the multiple copies of file across the geography, and that can offer you the disaster recovery of it. So not only the compute, but then also the VMware with the ASR, the system state resiliency or recoverability we can achieve, and finally the file share can be achieved as well. But what about security, right? While you are actually deploying the ATP, DLP type security features on-prem, what to do with that? So Azure is investing over $1 billion in an annual investment to improve the security posture for our Azure backbone, and naturally that investment is valued for our customer, and they can take an advantage of that investment and make sure they are protected against that. We have over 3,500 plus security experts making sure that they observe over trillion signals and make sure that the environment is safe and secure. That exact same experience can be extended by you by adopting an Azure Security Center along with the Sentinel-like product, and you can extend that same security posture to be implemented on-prem using a hybrid with the Azure Arc. So that's the advantage. So now not only we are just enabling compute, but we are also making sure that your Azure deployed governance model, Azure deployed Azure backup protection, and Azure deployed security posture can be extended on-prem as well. And that's what essentially we call it an intelligent detection response system that offers you at both on-prem and in Azure as well. Looking into that, we can capture all the logs and metrics that has been captured, providing you end-to-end solution. Can be crafted with a KQL, we call it, and using KQL you can craft any type of use case you want to deploy for SIEM, that is security incident and event management system, while the continuous monitoring is happening using the log analytics behind the scene, while Azure Arc is capturing all the logs from your devices. This SIEM solution of an Azure Sentinel has been put on top of it as a layer to offer you the same level of security, whether that your workload runs on-prem or in the cloud, any cloud, or maybe in Azure. That's the power. Last but not least, while all of your Azure hybrid is managed through an Azure AD, the same experience can be taken, advantage can be taken over identity and access management that has been deployed using Azure AD, and that can be extended to your on-prem devices as well, making them a member of an Azure AD domain services. Same rollback access system that you can implement on an Azure can be extended on-prem using Azure AD Connect. It can be vice versa. If you are managing your Azure Active Directory on-prem, or the Active Directory domain controller on-prem, you can use an Azure AD Connect to replicate your directory structure into an Azure, so that your users can take an advantage of multi-factor authentication and so forth. That's literally a multifaceted hybrid capability we have deployed. But we are not stopping there, right? So we want to make sure that you also understand there is an innovation taking place in the networking, and wanted to highlight the power of an Azure network. One of the only cloud provider keeps the massive terabit backbone network, where you can get an entry into any Azure using over 100 some edge location. You can get into the Azure network, and you can access the workload running in anywhere in the Azure, and that can bring you a low latency experience. And your entry point could be Express Cloud, your entry point could be VPN over the POP location. From there, you are unleashing the network of an Azure backbone, and that's why we want to offer you a next-gen network design to all the enterprises, where they can unlock their environments and the network design from a traditional configuration perspective. Rather, you can kind of start deploying the vWAN and the Azure Virtual WAN, and you can basically use Azure as your main network backbone to offer services anywhere from an Azure. Using Azure Front Door, you can also allow your end users or the consumers to access your application into an Azure. All of you know that the cloud platforms are very, very popular. The infrastructure as a code like deployment can easily take place. Azure also offers you platform as a service where you can deploy your application in form of a code onto an Azure. How can we seamlessly bring a DevOps experience to it? So a lot of people are adopting Azure DevOps or either the GitHub and adopt a continuous CI/CD experience into it. The same CI/CD experience can be bring forward into an on-prem hosted gear using managed through an Azure Arc. You can use the same type of code. You determine what locations you want to deploy, and the similar Azure Fabric experience can be extended into your on-prem using Azure Arc, but then Azure DevOps can bring you that seamless experience using the code deployment practices that has been adopted on Azure DevOps. So in a nutshell, we have covered many facets of hybrid experience that is offered by a Microsoft. I would like to end with the one last advantage is the Azure hybrid benefit, we call it, which is the license is purchased through the traditional mechanism, and that's exactly what you can still leverage into an Azure, and that's the additional advantage that we want to bring forward. So licenses purchased as of today. You don't need to purchase any license when you deploy on an Azure using AHub benefits, or we call it Azure Hybrid benefit, and that's the another icing on a cake that I would consider. I would encourage you to consider. And with that, I would like to close our today's session with these are the 7 different hybrid scenarios that you can consider. You can unify the hybrid operations like backup or maybe the management, RBAC, all of that experience you wanted to bring on-prem and Azure in a unified manner. Second would be if you want to run data platform or data services anywhere, whether on-prem, any cloud, or maybe running itself in an Azure. The build and manage applications using Kubernetes, right? It's the very seamless. Our competitors offers the very similar features to that particular segment that is not going away. If you are into a process of modernizing your data center and you are challenged with some of the specific workload like the process network or maybe the data sovereignty requirements and all, or maybe the local processing need, you can consider Azure Stack. If you have a workload running on VMware certified and you don't want to disrupt a whole lot, you can bring your entire VMware into an Azure. If you want to adopt AI into Edge, like the Heathrow Airport have implemented the baggage screening apps to determine whether there is a human trafficking happening or maybe the drugs trafficking, that type of edge solution that you want to deploy, you can definitely consider for that purpose. And last but not least is the hybrid networking. Don't invest in expensive network capability using MPLS and all, rather start taking advantage of vWAN, and that could be another one to start your journey into the cloud, taking advantage of it. Where you can learn more about Azure Hybrid is just simply go to azure.com/hybrid. And with that, thank you very much.